Crowdsourcing has always seemed like a good way to get input and ideas from outside a company or organization. But today, we uncover some research that indicates there might be a right way and a wrong way to crowdsource and inspire creativity in general. This is Shadûf.
Welcome to Shadûf, the place where business, research, and entertainment make a baby in your mind. We will show you common trends you'll want to leave behind. It happens all the time. We'll always bring a fresh perspective, so you can trust the data or the data, but not the feces you've been fed. Welcome to Shadûf. It's time to stop the song and start the show.
I'm Weston Smith, your host, here with Head of Research Dustin Harding and fellow research scientist Lauren Silva. How's it going, guys?
It's going good.
Yeah, it's going good.
Are you indicating that I have something on my lip?
Nope.
Oh.
My lip was itchy,
Oh.
so I was itching it.
I guess I just internalized that. It's a great day here. I hope everyone's enjoying the Olympics. Are you guys enjoying the Olympics?
I love the Olympics.
Lauren, do you have any opinions on the Olympics or updates or anything?
Well, I have a couple things. So I think one of the things I was most excited for this year, I'm sure a lot of people have heard, this is the first year that skateboarding has been put into the Olympics. They announced it back in 2016. So a couple days ago, they just had the first events for skateboarding. It was street skateboarding, and
Cool.
The ages for at least the women's category, that's one I watched more of because I had the time. The ages ranged from 13 to 34 of like people competing. And then
Nice.
the top three girls who won the gold, silver, and bronze, 13 years old, the first two, and then 16. So it was two girls from
Wow.
Japan and one girl from Brazil. And it was really awesome.
That's great.
To watch. And then another really cool thing, so the Philippines has like never won a gold medal, like ever in their history. And this one girl, her name is Hidalyn Diaz. She was competing in like the 55 kilogram weight class, and she came in gold. She overall lifted a combined weight of 224 kilograms through her different sets and everything. And so she won the first gold. It was really cool to see like her reaction and stuff after she won, and it was like so heartwarming.
Yeah, that's awesome. Got a question for you. If you guys, you can pick two. One of them is something that you think, if you had to compete into the Olympics, like if your life depended on it, let's say, you getting a gold medal or getting a medal in the Olympics, and you had to pick whichever one would be your best shot, whichever one you had the best shot at, because this is like, like your life's on the line, guys.
Oh no.
And then which one you would, if you could just choose to just have the natural ability to be good at and compete on, which one would you choose? Would they be different, or would they be
Oh, best shot versus choice?
best shot versus you just suddenly have the ability?
When I was young, I really wanted to do the skeleton. I was excited about that. Now that I'm older, that terrifies me.
If I had to pick like one I think that maybe I could slightly have a shot at, I don't know why curling comes to mind, but
Okay.
like probably because I rollerbladed as a kid, and so like there's no skates in curling, is there?
Curling, yeah.
Never mind.
No, nope.
I take it back. I would just be the one to push the curling thing. I could probably push it somewhat straight. If I could pick any sport though that I would want to do and that I could be really good at, I would pick figure skating though.
Figure skating, I know.
Figure skating's what I would pick.
I would pick, my best shot being the optimal word here, is skeet shooting. I think I'd be pretty good at that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously nowhere near the people who have trained for it, but if I was, if I had to pick one that I could be good at, I'm a decent shot. And then for the one that I would choose, let's see, I'd probably pick something like gymnastics, because then I would use my gymnastic skills and agility to fight crime outside of the Olympics, outside of training. So.
Olympian by day, vigilante by night.
That's right. I'm assuming they all do that. All the good ones, at least, right?
All our favorites.
No, we're going to jump into our study now. This one's really cool. Oh, Lauren, this is research that you found,
It
right?
is some research that I found. Yeah, so I found this article in the Journal of Marketing Research.
Okay.
And the article's titled Constraining Ideas, How Seeing Ideas of Others Harms Creativity and Open Innovation. And so it's
Okay.
talking about like crowdsourcing innovation contests and stuff, like when companies reach out and they have people submit different ideas and things.
Yeah, I've seen this a little bit. It pops up every now and then.
Yeah.
So like what are some examples? Like
Like companies like OpenIdeo.com, Crowdspring.com, 99designs.com, Atizo.com, all these .coms, but they specialize in this, where companies, to get new, fresh ideas, and so, a lot of times from their own customers, they'll go onto these platforms and different people will submit different ideas.
now is this like Doritos asking for ideas for new flavors or something like that?
It can be, so that's like a marketing push
Right.
in a way, right? And it can be like a marketing push like that.
But not
right?
always. But
But not always. But these
Okay.
ones, they're platforms dedicated to this, to helping companies innovate.
okay, just getting ideas or submissions from people outside of the company.
Yeah, from
Okay.
customers and,
Designers, people who just go on and they want to try their hand at it kind of thing, varying
Yeah.
skill levels and stuff.
With a lot of these crowdsourcing platforms, one thing that's common is that you can see prior submissions.
Right.
And what's interesting is that, you think of the way the mind works. The more submissions you have, the more, if we're building a scaffolding in our mind, right?
Right.
The more examples you can see, the more experience you can have, the better scaffolding you can build in your mind, and the more likely you are to get to that next level of innovativeness.
Right.
Right? We kind of build on what other people have done in the past.
Yeah. So you see progress. You see a higher and higher standard because you're perfecting an idea. You're building on something. I get it.
Yeah, and so what they did though in this study, it seems to counter that idea. Once you throw competitiveness in this, once you're looking at ideas and you're competing against those ideas, it kind of it messes with you in a big way.
Okay.
And so in this first study, what they did is they either showed people just like 2 ideas or 10 ideas. One group saw 10 prior ideas, the other group saw 2.
Okay.
Okay, and what they found was the more ideas you saw, the worse off your submissions were. So
okay.
the less they measured it on several different ways. What they found is if you were exposed to more ideas, your idea was less innovative, less original, less useful. You submitted fewer ideas, and just like they also just had this total innovativeness score that,
That they just saw that was definitely lacking.
Yeah.
Yep.
So across all boards, they were much worse off the more submissions that they saw.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they did this they did 6 like actual contests they took data from and stuff. So 6,
Really?
yeah, so it was a field experiment. So
Okay.
they looked at 6 different contests that were open, and the data came from all of that and everything. So it wasn't like a fabricated like contest. It was
Like hypothetical.
Yeah.
This was real
real
stuff.
contests. Yeah.
Yeah.
As we're talking about this kind of reminds me, maybe this has nothing to do with it, but of our study, of several of our studies
Yeah.
based on comparison.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Leadership or recognition,
Yeah.
also our own skills, and the renting versus buying episode that we've talked about, the study that you did, where we were talking about, if you buy something, you're comparing yourself to other people who own that, so you're less likely to, because of that comparison mentality, you're less likely to move forward with that or progress in it. Whereas if you're just renting, you don't feel that pressure or comparison with people who are experts in whatever that skill that you're trying to learn.
Yeah, and what's interesting, it is kind of like a same type of research area.
Right.
But they're finding in this research with this specific kind of phenomenon that they're looking at, there's a different process, a different mental process going on in the background.
Okay.
So in this case, instead of being like social comparison, now I feel like I can't do something because I just have low self-confidence.
Okay.
In this case, what they find is that if we go back to the scaffolding that we're building in our mind, if you're competing against other ideas, you think your idea has to be original.
Right.
And so the more ideas that you see that you're competing against, you feel like you have to take those ideas out of the scaffolding in your mind. So you have to remove those things, and there's less to build on.
You're putting more constraints on the ideas and things that you can do because you're like, oh,
Right.
this has been done, so I can't do this.
I have to appear better from being unique and being different from these other ideas. So you're kind of, you're putting yourself in that constraint in a box.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because essentially, from a creative standpoint, like you're always thinking, I've got to think outside the box, but you don't realize that this is actually doing the opposite, having the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Where you're seeing all these other things and you're like, okay, I've got to do something outside of that box, when really what you should be doing is
embracing the box.
Embracing it, and then building on it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating.
And what's cool is, how do we get people to embrace that box, right? How do we
Right.
get them to build on that scaffolding instead of removing crucial pieces?
Yeah.
Is the question. And what they find is, hey, they have another study where they make it so the prior submissions that you're looking at, for one group of individuals, they just said, hey, these are just prior submissions from something in the past. You're not competing against the things you're looking at.
Okay, that makes sense. So this is a second follow-up study that they ran, and they said, now they did two groups and.
Yeah, two groups. So you're in all cases you're either being shown, in this case actually you were shown either 5 prior ideas or 50 prior ideas.
Okay.
But then what they did is they either made it, okay, you're competing against these things you're looking at, or you're not competing.
Or
against
here's just some ideas that we're not going with.
Yeah.
You're not competing against them. Submit your own ideas.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so what they see is if it's competitive, you get kind of that same effect that we saw. Like they were less innovative, less original, less useful, and they submitted fewer ideas.
Wow.
But if they made it so it wasn't competitive, it reversed that effect. So if it wasn't competitive, the more ideas that you saw, that you were exposed to, increased originality, it increased the number of ideas that you submitted, and it increased total innovativeness.
Wow. This may be a little bit of a tangent, but go with me on this. I kind of have thought about when a big blockbuster movie's coming out and it comes out and it's just terrible, and you think like, why? How did this get passed? How did this get passed through so many levels of critique where it just turned into this? And then you have other people, you just have random people on the internet now that YouTube's popular, or you have like forums and things where people can comment on it, and you have like fan suggestions, and anyways, you have all this feedback where it's like you see these ideas coming from these people after the fact that are like such great ideas, and essentially what they're doing is what you're saying is they're building on something, and it's like almost like, can you harness that before you actually release the production, before you actually release the final product, and try and harness that, like, hey, without trying to be like have the coolest original idea, and not do what everyone else is doing. How about just look at this from a perspective and just say, hey, what would you have done differently here? And build on these ideas rather than competing. Because maybe that's why the original production kind of ended up a little bit rough, because everyone's trying to be too original, trying to do something that's like, oh, this is going to be super unique, but then it just gets lost in that process.
Yeah.
And
what's interesting is you end up not making something unique.
Right, exactly.
Like,
and that's where it suffers. Or it doesn't make sense, or it suffers in some way or another, right?
Yeah, I just think it's so interesting that in those cases, in these studies, when you're trying to do something different,
right,
it ends up being less different
Right.
and less innovative.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me.
And I always come, so just to clarify, I always come at things from a creative position, from a creative process and mindset, but this can be applied to all areas of business, right? I mean,
Yeah, management. I mean, say you're in work meetings, right?
Right.
And you're brainstorming.
yeah,
If there's competitiveness in that brainstorm session, people aren't going to be building on ideas of others. They're just
Right.
going to try to think of something different
right.
than what somebody else just said. And so if you can remove that competitive nature and not try to think of something unique from what somebody else has talked about, but instead build,
Right.
that's when really good and innovative ideas would come.
It's interesting, yeah, because now that I think about it, like if you have an idea, or if you're trying to come up with an idea that's different from someone, like to show that you can go a completely different direction, it's almost like subtle commentary that direction that was just submitted by someone else wasn't good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So that's a whole other thing, right?
Right.
Because in this study, you're not looking at the feelings of the prior submissions,
Right.
those individuals' feelings. You're just looking at the person trying to come up with an original idea, right?
True, yeah.
What's interesting also, one other thing that we'll talk about with this that I love, you may think, oh, well, yeah, these are just people that lack experience.
Okay.
Right. But in our company or whatever, with employees, these are people that have a lot of experience, and so they've already built this scaffolding, and it's strong, and so that they won't really struggle with it as much as these beginners.
Okay.
Right, but they actually find the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah, it's in another one of their studies, they look at this effect between experts and between novices, and they find it's stronger. It's a stronger effect with experts, and so experts struggle even more with this because you're removing so many crucial pieces to your scaffolding and to your concept.
Well, and then you also have like when you're an expert in something, you know all these rules and things that you should and shouldn't do with the design, so you have those in place, and then you're also taking out, these ideas of others, and you're making your box almost smaller and smaller than people who are novices and might not have some of this background information that might be limiting some of the experts.
Okay.
This would be interesting. I wonder if what's going on is if you're an expert and you're forced to come up with an innovative idea,
Okay.
you feel like you have to disregard all of your prior ideas, not just the individuals and the ideas you've seen from others, but also you have to disregard all of the expertise that you've already built.
Right.
If I'm going to do something innovative, it has to be something I haven't thought of before.
Right.
And so you're instead of building on your expertise and the expertise of others, you end up disregarding that.
Which can almost kind of feel
Which
like
limits like crazy.
It almost kind of feels like demotivating. You
Yeah.
know, like if I'm an expert, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I have to think of something I haven't done before. When really it's like, no, take your expertise and do
Tweak
something
it.
professional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do something professional and great based on what you know.
I mean, taking out the competitiveness
Right.
it's going to, if we're thinking of it from like a managerial perspective, working in your teams at work and stuff, taking out the competitiveness will help improve the ideas. There'll be less discord because your employees aren't competing against each other. They'll be
Right.
able to, like Dustin said earlier, build upon each other's ideas and, come up with things that are actually going to work and be beneficial.
Yeah, so it's almost like create a framework where you can have input, either within a team or if you're doing some crowdsourcing thing that's outside of the company or organization that you're operating in. Do something, make it obvious that it's very it's low pressure, kind of more sandboxy rather than like creating this competitive environment.
Yeah. Companies actually are also using this type of platform within their company,
Right.
within other employees. So, for instance, when when I was working in a company, they had this competition with innovative ideas. They purchased a platform to help do that, and it was with employees.
Okay.
So we were all trying to make innovative ideas that would help lead the company in different directions, newer directions. And yeah, we could see prior submissions. We could see
Okay.
these things. And so I would expect fully like this same effect to occur, whether this is occurring within an organization or through crowdsourcing.
I can totally see that. And it's so interesting because this would seem like such a brilliant idea, right? It seems like new innovation, like, hey, we're going to get input from people outside of just our little team, you know?
Yeah.
You know, whether it's getting ideas from all employees, you know, like, you know, even if you're like, hey, even people in the call center, like, offer your ideas. You might have some great ideas, you know, or outside of the company, like, hey, we're going to do this thing where, you know, we're going to take input suggestions from other people, you know. It seems like such like a fresh way to throw new ideas into the mix.
Yeah.
But according to this, it's not having that. You're kind of killing the effect.
As long as there's a competitive nature involved.
Right.
It can hurt the effect. So two things: as long as it's competitive, and people can see prior submissions, then
Which creates kind of a competitiveness.
yeah.
Essentially.
Then you're kind of hurting creativity by making it competitive.
Right.
But
So what innovation you might have gleaned from people who are potentially going to submit, you're not going to get as much from them.
Yeah. You know, I'm just thinking of ways that you can get rid of this competitive aspect. I wonder if you even have teams of people competing against each other. You at least have people within a team
Working together.
and building upon their ideas.
To kind of get the best of
So
both
you can
worlds.
still kind of keep that competitive nature, but at least allow people to build on ideas.
Collaborate.
That might be a way around it if you're absolutely set on this competitiveness idea, which in
Right.
some sense you kind of always have to have in one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's not going, you know, you can't control how people, you know, even how people interpret, you know. But like you said, if you take things away like, oh, you can't see other people's submissions.
If it has to be competitive, don't let people see prior submissions.
And maybe you can make the input more vague, you know, even if it is a competition, you don't have to say like, we're going to choose the best of this or choose the, you know.
I would say focus on quality in the competition and not uniqueness,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
which kind of brings its, there's struggles there, I guess. Well, the trouble is if you have copiers that copy and just up the quality just a little bit. They do the same exact idea with just a little bit of a quality push. You're going to hurt feelings. Like,
Right.
You know, so there's that kind of competitiveness makes it tricky.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's not because we're not even saying it's always a bad thing, but according to this study, you have to be careful if you're going to involve it, and you might be kind of sweeping creativity off its feet, you know.
Yeah.
It's one of those like pick your own battles
Right.
kind of situation. You have to decide which aspects are going to be more important to you. And if competitiveness is, like you said, take out the prior submissions. But if them being able to build off things is, take out the the competitiveness nature.
Right.
Yeah, that's the best way to build innovation is by removing competitiveness and getting everybody's thoughts out there that everyone can then build upon.
Right. Well, that's awesome. That's a way cool study and definitely something to think about. So today we've referenced several of our past studies too, and if you guys haven't listened to them, go and listen to them. Even if it's not something within your specific field, they still all somehow connect in cool
Yeah.
ways, and it can help and it can help further. Here again, what we're trying to do, we talk about different topics every week, but we are also trying to like build on certain things. And it's so cool to see the connections between things, between different areas that we, when we run these studies. So go ahead and listen to our other podcast episodes and our other content on social media. And thanks for joining us this week on the Shadûf podcast. Shadûf is sponsored by the Woodbury School of Business. Please consider following us on social media or giving us a review on Apple Podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.